Alright, so Deacon, Territory Battle Officer, House of Wren, back again with a quick overview of how to use Echobase, the platoon assigner for Galaxy Heroes. This tool is super useful. It requires, for full access, I think it's a $2, $3 per month Patreon subscription. Well worth it. The amount of time that it saves you compared to doing it through a spreadsheet manually for every single time you run through. Like, I'll pay $10 per month to use this. For larger guilds, like you're looking at the 500-600 million GP guilds, maybe not necessarily as valuable because they're able to fill every single operation, every single phase, 3-star every phase as they push towards the Relic 9 content. But for the smaller guilds, it's great because it now has that sandbag feature where it allows you to fill or complete planets over the course of 1, 2, 3 phases. The sandbag planner tool in Echobase, I think, is still in the beta, so it's not perfect. So it does still require a fair bit of manual input, but it's great because it pulls all of your guild data from the most current refresh on SWGOH.gg, and by doing that gives you the operations you can fill, the operations you can't fill, and then it has this sandbag planner, right? So real quick, I'll go through the sandbag planner for how we execute our tasks on the road to 21 and 23 stars, right? So for House of Wren on dark side, we 3-star Mustafar on phase 1, so that doesn't change. Then we spend one phase preloading Geonosis before we 3-star. And then we spend the remainder of the fight preloading the dark side. For mid and light side, I just click that little plus bucket icon to add a sandbag to it. We don't star either of those on day 1, and we 3-star both of them on day 2. Then we go light side. While we're finishing off Geonosis, we preload mid and light side, and then in phase 4 we 3-star Braca, so that closes that off, and we don't bother with Kashyyyk or Lothal. As we move towards 23 stars, we take one more phase of preloading for Felucia. And then on the last day, we get as many stars as we possibly can in Tatooine. So this is the setup that will pull all the data, build the operations and the assignments for the guild, and it'll do it by individual phase. So once this is done, you just smack that save button, hit save, and now it'll populate all of the ops and assignments for each phase. And as you saw, the wording there says that it's not capable of properly determining which ops are impossible to fill in the sandbag. So it does still require a significant amount of manual input, but nowhere near as much time and effort as is required if you were to do it on your own, right? So now that that's done, you go back to Echobase, go into the platoon assigner, and now you can choose your templates. Right, so it has our sandbag day 1 planner phase 1. Click on that, and then it comes up with all of the operations that we're able to fill, period, not necessarily by specific phase, right? So as you can see, all the characters with the or the brown background are the rare characters in the guild. These rare characters are ones where if you hover over the number, right now our guild has 4 Relic 5 BT1s, but this entire phase only needs 2. Where the red number comes in is we need 4 trips, but the guild actually only has 2 at Relic 5 or higher. So this is where you got to do a bit of the work. The app right now has done it for us, saying like this operation right here is impossible to fill. However, we're currently in the process of getting a couple of more trips up to Relic 5, which will mean this entire block of 6 operations, so all of Mustafar Relic 5, is able to be filled. So that's 60 million, and that's like as we were talking about before with the spreadsheet, right? So that's we're able to fill 60 or 6 ops, 60 million points, which means we only need some combat missions and a far lower amount of GP deployed compared to if we weren't able to fill those ops. But if you look underneath all of these characters that are required to fill those operations for that zone, each one of them has a name under it, and right now Echobase will automatically assign those characters. So if I go and hit submit, I can go in, I can pick who if I want to at somebody specifically. So for example, I would do at House of Wren. I would include mentions and send DMs to each member, because then you would get in your Discord direct messages, these are the operations and the characters you personally need to fill for each phase. And then inside whatever assigned channel, so I would normally put it in territory battle assignments, it'll give you, so everybody can see it, on top of you being told specifically what you need to fill. And I can go in and show you what that looks like right here. Right, so what it'll do, I'll go back to day 1 because it's the cleanest. That's not day 1. All right, so this is what'll pop up. It'll send basically gives you your legend, whatever, but then it shows exactly what it shows in there. So we can fill all of these operations on Mustafar, we can fill all of these operations on Corellia, we can fill all of these operations on Coruscant, and then it goes into the specific assignments. So everybody who's got their name popping up here will have a specific assignment, and then it'll go into each operation. So for example, Mad has to fill Maul, Scion Probe Droid, Melbourne, Darth Maul, so on and so forth for each and every single operation as you go through. Then when you get into the operations that you're sandbagging, it'll either tell you you have an assignment, you have to fill it this phase because we don't have enough characters to fill it in a single phase. So we have to fill it now, and we have to fill it in the sandbag phase, and then we have to fill it in the phase where we go to star. Or for example, it'll come and say fill it in another phase. So for our guild, we don't have enough Imperial probe droids at Relic 5 to be able to fill all of the operations on dark side plus all of the operations mid at the same time, which means we're sandbagging that, and that Imperial probe droid will go into that operation once we roll over into the next phase, and so on and so forth. But I'm not going to do this because we are done territory battles for right now. But this will be for day 1. The problem is it hasn't given any assignments for any of the characters in middle, because it doesn't take into account when we get into the Relic 6 dark side and we go to Geonosis, Boba Fett side of Django, like he's in every operation from now until the end of time. And because it hasn't given these assignments, the app assumes that people who have this character are just going to stick them wherever, but it hasn't given them as actual assignments. So to make this work, you go in to day 2 for the sandbag planner, and then you can check and see who's been assigned for what. So right now, if we go into day 2, Geonosis, we can fill a whole bunch of operations at the Relic 6 level, but you look 1 Boba Fett, 2 Boba Fett, 3 Boba Fett, 4 Boba Fett. You come in here, the guild only has 4 Boba Fett Sign of Django's at Relic 6. Um, so it didn't assign them in the previous phase. There was no assignments for this, and now it's saying we don't have enough. So what you do is either go in and see, okay, so Onyx, Mad Roland, Zurin, um, they all have Boba Fett side of Django, right? So you can go in and you can manually select who's given that assignment. So I'm going to give this to Mad. I'm going to give this to Onyx. And then I'm going to give this one to Zion or Giron, right? And go through and do that for all of these characters. The other thing you can do, which is usually equally as quick, like if you're looking at BT1 and there's a BT1 here that hasn't been filled, you just go into the unit search for your guild, type in BT1, hit enter, sort by relic, right? So those are all our guys with um, relic BT1s. You can come back in here. Okay, so Onyx has that one. I don't think there's another one, so I'll take this one. And I don't think there's another one. So what you're trying to do with this, and unfortunately right now we don't have an ETH Koth at Relic. I don't think we have an ETH Koth at Relic at all. We do not. So right now this platoon's not possible to be filled. I expect that this one is. Okay, so like there's another BT, right, that can be filled by, let's say, DD. So if you have an operation that is impossible to be filled, the easiest thing you can do, click ignore this operation. Right? And what that will do is it will take those numbers that were originally like -5 and take it down to, we're not filling those, so they're not counted in that number. So come over here, I'll do it again. Ignore this operation. Now we have enough Boba Fett sign of Django's to fill everything. Now we're the and like for the light side, everything's good except it's like, oh, we don't have a Kiadi Mundi. Did we assign him in phase 1? No, we didn't. So this is the big problem with the app, is making sure that every single one of those characters, especially when you're sandbagging across phases, has a name underneath it. So if we look at Kiadi Mundi there, he's not assigned in phase 1. He's also not assigned in phase 2, which means there's a good chance that nobody's going to place him, which means that that op will go unfilled. So what we do is there Kiadi Mundi? Well, there's a Kiadi Mundi there. Who's got Kiadi Mundis? So we've got 2 Kiadi Mundis. So Showtime's going to fill this one in phase 1. And Rinzer's going to fill this one in phase 1. Oops. And then in phase 2, Showtime's filling that one already as assigned. So we just go, nope, that one's filled in the first phase. That one's not filled, so we're going to give Rinzler that one. Yep. And then there are no more Kiadi Mundis except for this one, so Showtime can fill that one. Oh, it's already filled. Anyway, point is if you go into the second phase before you go and start something and somebody does not have a name under them, like for example, we have a TIE interceptor here that's not being filled in that phase, plus we need more TIE interceptors on the dark side. You have to go in and manually set so that it says, no, I'll fill this one. Where's my name? I'll fill this one. Onyx is going to fill this one. DD's going to fill this one. So that when I go to phase 2, these are all done. You just click fill in another phase so that it doesn't resend the assignment. And you do that basically after you make sure that all of these special tunes have a name under them for phase 1. and then you go and mark if they've already been filled in phase 2. It's even easier to do it with the in game. You go in, um, so at when I do the assignments early in the morning, I go in. I'm like, okay, all of operation 2 has been filled, so this one's filled. This one is ignored because we can't fill it. This one is filled. And then this one is like, oh, no, that's not filled, but this is filled. This is filled. Or you even go in and go, the big thing you don't want to do is you don't want to hit filled in another phase and then say something isn't filled in another phase, because then you have to assign it to somebody. You have to tell them to fill it. Right? And then you go in and you just keep doing that. So day 3, for us, when we get into the Relic 6 content, it gets even more complicated. So we actually, if it shows a green number here, it means it's possible to be filled. It doesn't mean you're able to fill all of the green ones all at the same time. It just means it's possible. So we have all the characters in the guild to do all of this, but we may or may not have enough characters across all of the other operations to do it, right? But the easy ones are, well, we just don't have any Relic 6 OG Mando. We don't have any Relic 6 Embos. We don't have any Relic 6 Zalbars, and we don't have any Relic 6 Jawas. So this one just gets completely ignored. Same with this, right? We don't have any Relic 6 Snow Troopers, so this one can't be filled. This one, we don't have Death Trooper, right? This one, we don't have Coolie or Logray. But this is where, if people in the guild are asking, who should I relic next? I've done my journeys. I don't have anything to work on. What should I do? Well, this is where you start doing the hard math of, okay, so if we had a Coolie, and who has Coolie at Relic? So we have 2 dudes in the guild that have Coolie at Relic 6. We're never, as a guild, going to ask, hey, I need you to do this now. We'll ask for volunteers. But there are people who it is easier for them, especially if they have been assigned that character in a previous phase. And I do not think that Coolie has been assigned, but Logray definitely was. So if you look at Logray, Star Wars Dad relic that guy in order to be able to fill an operation on Coruscant for day 1. He is one of 3 in the guild that did it, because we need Logray there, we need Logray here, and we need Logray somewhere else, which means that one of those 3 people should be relatively easy for them to relic Logray if somebody else relics Coolie up to takes them from 5 to 6, and then do we have enough of the other characters in the zone? So once we've filled everything up, we're like, oh, well, we just don't have, well, we should have enough Mauls. Everybody should have Maul. But we may not have enough, especially these units that are very difficult to get, right? So Scythe requires you to have done it's a conquest unit. I'm not even sure if it's in Proving Grounds now, but you also have to have Grand Inquisitor to unlock it. So if you look at our guild, we have 4 Grand Inquisitors, which means the most Scythes that we could possibly have right now, regardless of how many shards people have, is 4. Which means during this phase, if we're going to try and fill the Scythe, it means we have to fill all the Scythes over here. We have to fill all the Scythes that are in here. But it's the nice part, but it's where all the work comes in for the sandbagging. So that Scythe's going to get filled on the next phase. That Scythe's going to get filled on the next phase. If we were filling this operation, that Scythe would be filled this phase, and then that would mean that we would have a couple of extra Scythes to play with going forward. Same with the TIE Interceptor, that sort of thing. So it actually takes a hard look at the math of, okay, yes, if we had another Coolie and another Logray at Relic 6, we would be able to finish this operation, but maybe we wouldn't, because this also has Grand Inquisitor. Right? How many other Grand Inquisitors are required? Well, Grand Inquisitor there, Grand Inquisitor there, Grand Inquisitor there, Grand Inquisitor there. So if we have 4 Grand Inquisitors, but 8 are required to fill the operations, and it's not something that we're going to be able to delay from phase to phase, then there's no point in relicking the characters. The easy mode is actually this operation. Um, so yes, a lot of the guild has Jawa at Relic 3 because he is part of the Java Journey Guide. Not a lot of the guild has Zalbar. I think we have one Zalbar. Yeah, we do have one Zalbar at Relic 5. And then a lot of people have Ambo at Relic 5 uh, for the journey. And then people have OG Mando at Relic for the Fennec counter team, but not necessarily. Well, none of them have him at Relic 6 or higher. However, the rest of the units in this operation are easy to fill. We have a lot of gases, a lot of cats, a lot of JMLs, a lot of JKL, gas, but this is also a super intensive unit. So if we're filling 2 cats and then a full roster of either the Jedi team you're using for combat missions or the supports you're using for the Jedi team for combat missions, you might take a hit on the combat mission side. And then we'll skip all the way ahead right till the last day, just to show where, like, this is the easiest day because there's the least number of moving pieces. You should already have this operation almost completely filled. But now if we're looking at getting extra stars, well, okay, so if we're going to get extra stuff, we have 2 Relic 7 Boba Fett sign of Django's in the guild. None of them are used in this operation, which means that this should be relatively easy to fill on Tatooine, except for this, right? So, Fifth Brother, if we're doing Tatooine on the last day, if you have Fifth Brother at Relic 7, you probably have Grand Inquisitor at Relic 7, which means that whole team is being used for the Riva combat mission. If that's the case, there's never going to be a point until everybody in the guild has unlocked Riva in getting a Relic 7 Cara Dune and a Relic 7 Chiridium Way. So then you're looking at the deficiencies of what's possible. Well, we should probably have a couple of Relic 5 Ewok Elders. Oh, nobody's going to want a Relic 7 Cup, so that's out. Okay, this operation here. This is a pretty good one to start targeting because we have the TIE interceptors we need, we have the Hondo, we have the Boba Fetts, we have the Mauls, we have the Malguses. We don't have the Barriss, but we have Barriss at Relic level, and it's a decent character. A lot of Ben Kenobis at, I think, Relic 5, and a lot of Finn resistant heroes at Relic 5. So if we're going to target an op, and we're asking for volunteers to take somebody, the volunteer would be somebody to take Barriss up to Relic 7, so that we can knock out this operation. We're probably miles away from knocking out this operation, probably miles away from this one. Nobody wants a Relic 7 Rose. I don't think we even have any Luminaras at Relic, but some of the rest of this might be the next target, because we have the Malguses, we have all the other pieces. What we don't have is Luminara, and we can go take a quick look. Yeah, so we have literally 0 Relic Luminara on Dollies. So now you're asking a member of your guild to take a character that is not even at Gear 13, or even Gear 12, and taking them all the way up through Relic 7 just to fill one operation. That one operation is a huge number of points. However, if that's the difference between getting 20, 22, 23, 24 stars, the amount of pressure you're putting on one person may not necessarily be worth it. Right? So that's how the operations in Echobase work, and basically how day one relatively easy because you're just going into day 2, finding all the names that are underneath the brown characters, putting them onto day 1 to make sure that you're not dropping the ball and missing potential operations on day 2 because they weren't assigned on day 1. The other thing to keep in mind, especially when we're looking at getting into um, preloads, like, so if we're looking at preloading a whole bunch on dark side day 2, um, to the point where we're preloading at 350,000 short of that first star. Oops. Where was I? Completely lost where I was going with this. Oh, that's right. So if you're looking to get that number, it's super important that you have nothing in this box, right? You cannot accidentally fill an operation um, if you are preloading up to the maximum, right? So you have to fill all of those operations except for one character. And the ideal, if you're looking at something, is you fill everything in Operation 4 except for Kylo Ren's command shuttle, because nobody's using that in any of the fleet missions. Everybody has it, but if you fill that because you weren't paying attention, it's going to push you over and get that star, and it's gonna get the whole shebang out. So when you are looking at those preloads that are super tight, what you'll actually have to do is you'll have to assign a unit not to be filled, and then you need everybody in the guild to subsequently not fill that unit. Um, but this has already been way longer than I expected it to be. But that's basically a summary of how the entire territory battle Rise of the Empire works. And then I guess the last little piece I'll do, I'll probably just send it to my guys in Discord, is like, this is what we can fill, this is what we need to get one more, and this will be what we need to get two more, but we're not going to pressure anybody into anything.